For context, this story takes place in a small rural town, and it happened yesterday. These are the ones involved. Me, an overprotective sister of 163 Kim. Important for later. Ben, twin brother of 200 Kim. A friendly giant. Friend 1, I friend 2. Entitled Mom. Entitled Kid, Police Officer. It was a good day after a constant rainy week, so Ben and I decided to call both my friends to meet in the public park of our town to play Smash Bros. Ultimate the Four together. And so it was, after midday we met. We paid for lunch between all of us and we sat in the shade of a tree, took out our switches and began to play quietly. Enter the entitled kid. We were in the middle of a very intense fight, and this kid of no more than 7 years old arrived in front of us. The conversation was the following. Entitled kid, wow. Are these switches? Friend 1.
That's right. You want to see us play?
Entitled kid, no, I want to play. Friend 2. Do you have a switch? If you have it with Smash, we can... The kid interrupts. I do not have one, but I can use one of yours. Me. That isn't happening, kid. Friend 2. That's right, I'm sorry. Ben. It is very expensive to give like that. The kid leaved while pouting. After another 15 minutes of play, the entitled kid returned while we were finishing a team match and we were talking. Entitled kid. Can you give me one to play now? Friend 2. Kid, we told you no. Go play elsewhere. And again, the kid left, and after another 10 minutes, we finished playing. So we started packing our things. Ben and I kept our switches in their protectors, and finally we said goodbye to our friends. Out of nowhere, I hear Ben yell, "Stop!" By the time I saw him again, Ben was holding the kid by his hair because the kid was trying to steal Ben's switch, and obviously he started screaming like any 7-year-old that's being pulled from the hair would. Then from behind us, some screams worthy of a banshee could be heard throughout the park. It was the entitled mother. The entitled mother was in her 30s, with a bit of overweight and Karen's typical hairstyle and 180 Kim. Ben recovered her switch and the entitled kid stayed on the floor, screaming as if he had broken an arm. Entitled mother.
How dare you hit my angel?
The mother raised his arm, ready to slap Ben. Remember that Ben is a friendly giant? He closed his eyes and raised one of his arms to protect himself from the blow. Do you also remember that I said that I'm overprotective? Immediately, I got between Ben and the entitled mother, catching her arm and preventing her from slapping Ben. Me. Your son was stealing Ben's switch. I'll kindly ask you to... She interrupts me. Get lost, witch. Yes, she called me a witch, and then with her other hand she tried to grab my hair to get me out of the way. Little did you know that both Ben and I were practicing Taekwondo for 5 years. It was easy to dodge her grab. I bent down and Ben moved back. Then I pushed my shoulder to the entitled mother, hitting her belly not very hard but enough to take her off me. Entitled, what's her problem? Me. You tried to hit my brother. Your trash kid tried to steal my brother's console, and then you tried to hit me. Am I the one with the problem? Ben tells me, calm down. I was in full sister mode. The entitled kid was still on the floor screaming, and that's where a police officer came. Apparently someone called, police officer, stop you two? What's the problem? Entitled kid, mommy, I want my switch. Entitled mother, these criminals stole my son's Nintendo and assaulted us. Me, lies. That is Ben's switch. Entitled mother, arrest them, officer. Police officer, 1 moment, please. He approached us. Can you prove that the console is yours? At that moment, both Ben and I smiled mischievously. Me, Ben, take out the switch. Ben, it's already out. Me, here, officer. I'll turn on portable Wi-Fi on my phone. Oh! It connected without asking for password. The online store of the console has a password, obviously, as the console is not ours. They should know it. Ben gave his switch to the officer, who, after understanding our plan, took the console to the entitled mother, who failed to put the password, and Ben made it at first try. Entitled kid, he hit me, police officer. Is that true? Ben, yes, but... Entitled mother. That's it. Arrest him for assault. Me. Close your mouth and let him talk. She starts to yell again, but the police officer says, ma'am, please calm down, young man. You can continue. Ben, as I said, I hit him. I had to grab him by the hair as he tried to steal my console. Ma'am, I'll have to arrest you for theft and disturb the peace. Red of fury, the entitled mother launched herself at me to hit me, to which I simply took a small leap to the side and left my foot in her path. The entitled mother ended up falling to the ground face first, and the officer immobilized her on the ground. Me. Threaten me or my brother again, and next one will be worse for you. I said in a cold tone while the officer was taking her to the police car. The officer told us that another unit would come to take us home, and that was the story of how we went out with friends, played Smash, and went home in a police car. The entitled mother was arrested, and after that, no more was heard about her. This was in the last throes of the analog mid-90s. Fax machines, FedEx, dial-up computing, and voicemail were the most common business tools. I was a young regional sales manager for a major branded consumer product. I covered the grocery class of trade in 11 western states. My division worked out of Chicago, and I had a home office on the West Coast. I had made my reputation by typically making my quota and keeping costs within budget. I would get reassigned to struggling markets, and more often than not, I would usually make my sales number. Nothing too fancy, I just figured where the best opportunities were and concentrated on them. In those days, we had something called Market Development Funds, MDF, or as we called it, making days fun in the time before such things were deemed illegal. It was money we could literally use for almost anything you could imagine. Wining and dining, sending buyers to the Super Bowl, taking them on market research trips. I once took 6 honchos for a weekend fishing in Mexico. As long as you had the receipts and your boss knew, except in cases where they specifically asked not to know, we were free to spend money as we saw fit. This was old-school Mad Men-style slush funds, all tax-deductible. Typically, the MDF money was 2 of your total annual gross sales and was use it or lose it, meaning it had to be spent because it wouldn't roll over. I always had some left over. As a team player, I would let my boss Sasquatch know so he could use it. No big deal. Towards the end of the year, my weekly FedEx pack from the company started including sign-offs for payments to a supplier I had never heard of before. What was weird is they were for a demo company that wasn't one of my regional suppliers. If you've ever been offered a sample or a coupon in a grocery store, that was a demo company. I called the broker agent in that market and learned that they had never used the company or even heard of them. I finally figured out that they were from Sasquatch and that he had thrown them in with my other sign-offs. I called him and asked if he knew what they were. He said that they should be assigned to my MDF and not to worry about them. This was a little unusual because demos would normally be taken out of other monies or came down for marketing. Whatever. I signed off on them. Hung out to dry. About 3 months later, I was called into E-Chief for a meeting where I was told I was being transferred to a market that I had never worked before and would be required to relocate. At the time, my wife was pregnant, read her pro-revenge story in my feed, and we just started an extensive remodel on our newly purchased house. The company had some relocation benefits, but it was just too hectic to pull up roots and move to the southeast. I declined the offer and was told that I could look for another job within the company or receive a severance package. I wound up taking a severance. The truth comes to light. Several months later, one of my ex-coworkers told me that my region had been taken over by one of Sasquatch's past work associates, who he managed to get hired in my spot, and that the region was tanking. Badly. Nothing made sense. Why was I terminated and then replaced by someone who lived in another city and who couldn't do the job? I started to think in my naivety that I may have put a target on my back. After some research and digging, which was much harder before the internet, I learned that the demo company billing the MDF was based in my ex-boss's previous city and was just a post office box, a telephone, and a DB, registered by the new person in my job. I later found out it was his girlfriend. I was livid. Like most people, I tend to plan revenge in my head, but never really go through with it. Most of the time, it's a coping mechanism and not very useful in moving on past being wronged. But this was so egregious, so uncalled for, and so disruptive to my life that I felt I had to get even. My plan evolved to take the guy down. Whatever the time it took, whatever the cost in lives or money, I was going to get this jerk. I may have been able to rat him out to the company, but they might have dismissed my complaint as coming from a disgruntled ex-employee with an axe to grind. The hook. I decided that I was going to approach the guy as a phony recruiter, not just a guy collecting resumes, but as a retained corporate headhunter, someone paid to onboard people for big jobs. I had spent a year early in my career working for a super exclusive headhunting firm and knew exactly what transpired in the process. My subterfuge required international telexes, phony letterhead, faked English accents, and overseas friends to do my bidding. Sasquatch was obsessed with expensive watches and golf. He played regularly and watched pro golf both on TV and live. He would incessantly chatter on about both subjects. To bait him, I arranged for him to be approached for an executive position with a major Swiss watch company for a position tied to pro golf and other swanky sports, sponsorships, and included a shopping list of benefits and perquisites. The job would require hobnobbing with major sports organizers, flying around the world, first class, natch, and basically spending money. It was a job he could only dream of. The setup. In the slow and methodical long con, I strung him along until the time was right to close with an offer. The only catch was that he had to report to Switzerland for final offer and onboarding. I deliberately scheduled it for the week of the old jobs division meetings and reporting. They were mandatory and impossible to miss without raising red flags. Sasquatch was worried that his absence would be impossible to cover, especially if he was out of the country. The headhunting firm said they could move the appointment up a few days so that he would be able to attend his meeting, but that he would need to purchase an unrestricted business class seat and make his own hotel reservations. Save your receipts, and the watch company will reimburse you, he was told. Sasquatch showed up to his swanky hotel suite, using his own credit card for the money room, and promptly received a note from the watch company that his appointment had to be rescheduled for the following Monday because of a major corporate crisis. Sasquatch called the phony recruiter in a panic about missing the corporate meetings back in the States. It was agreed that he would call in sick and that whatever happened with the old job, he was heading to much greener fairways. Enjoy your weekend in Europe. By Monday, you'll be in your dream job. The sting. While Sasquatch was cooling his jets in Europe, I nonchalantly called his boss, the president of the division, and casually asked for a reference on Sasquatch's work ethic and dates of employment. You'd be surprised how often this mistake happens. The president, to his credit, didn't tip his hand or act very surprised by the call, but like a good corporate wonk, he referred me to human resources. I let it slip that he was in Europe, finalizing his new job, and that he'd already given the company notice. My bad. Bloody aftermath and how the Revenge overstepped its original mission. Eventually, I was able to put together the aftermath from old coworkers and other people in the trade who did not know I was the Revenge Ninja. When Monday came and went, Sasquatch must have been apoplectic. This is to be assumed since we had cut all communications to let him twist in the wind. Because we received at least 20 calls to the exchange and multiple faxes. Sasquatch hung around the hotel for a day or two, and then finally decided to leave for home. I assume at some point he may have contacted the watch company, but I never confirmed it. When he finally got home, he found his office had been packed up and left with his wife. An HR person met him off-site to give him his severance and retrieve the car and other company property. I heard his wife left him sometime later and his girlfriend was fired for theft. I figure he spent at least $10,000 on travel and hotel. Epilogue. I wish I could say I tipped my hand and told Sasquatch that I was the author of his demise, but it really served no purpose and in theory may have exposed me to some retribution of my own. By my moral lodestar, I got even with a thief who was content to steal and take my livelihood. That was plenty. My younger sister lives an entitled life and expects me to pay for it. My sister Kelly feels that I owe her in this story as one of the last times she tried it. This happened quite a while ago, but it still makes me mad. My sister is horrible with money. She has no savings and horrible credit. She was in her 20s and still couldn't get a car loan by herself, not without a sizable deposit and a cosigner. So she convinced my dad to be her cosigner on a crappy car to get her to work. Our dad lived in another state and really just wanted to help her. She is very excited to get her car and show off a car that many 16 years old wouldn't want. It was a beater car that she overpaid for and the interest rate was 28%. I'm not kidding. About 5 months later, the entire electrical system on the car shuts down. Kelly calls our dad in Kentucky and asks her, what he is supposed to do? He lives almost 500 miles away. She throws a tantrum. She has perfected her execution and says to call me. Now, I have been put in similar situations before, and tell Kelly that I will arrange to have her car towed to a mechanic or a dealership, whichever she preferred, but that I'm not paying for anything. Not the towing, not the repairs, and that she is still responsible to keep up her insurance and pay her loan every month. You know, adulting, she processes. So the car gets towed to the shop, repairs are underway, and Kelly is suspiciously keeping informed about her car. Now, in the meantime, Kelly is borrowing one of our cars, late model large sedan, and me and my family go on a planned vacation to San Francisco for a week. While we are in California, Kelly calls to tell me her car is ready, and I tell her, that's great, and be sure to test drive before you leave and ask about warranties, etc. And she can leave our car at our house, and we can get the key when we get home in a few days. When we get home from vacation, the car is in the driveway. The back seat is completely filled with a myriad of fast food trash, but we have it back and I can clean it up, not too bad, just a lot of time. I cleaned everything, completely detailed that car. We were getting ready to sell it. About 2 weeks later on a Saturday night, I got a frantic call from Kelly. Oh my God, my car caught on fire. I said, what? She screams at me. My car is on fire. I asked her if she called 911, and she screamed, yes. The fire department is here now. I then tell her it sounds like everything is under control and I will talk to her in the morning. It was after 1. The following morning, we wake to find our car is missing. I called Kelly and asked about it, and she said she needed the car more than we do, and she made a friend drive her over to pick up her car. I informed her that in no way was that her car, and until insurance arranges a rental for her, she can still borrow our car. I know, I have doormat printed on my face. Almost 2 weeks later, and I still don't have my car back. And more troubling is that I haven't heard from Kelly for several days. When on the following Monday my phone starts to ring, I'm getting calls from her landlord, her job, and the loan company. My sister totally screwed me over. Let's start with her job. Kelly worked at a restaurant in the prior Friday night. She never took deposit to the bank. She left with a few $1,000s, and I was her urgency contact for work. Now on to the landlord. Kelly rented a room in a very nice home, in a very nice neighborhood for an unbelievable price. He was calling because she left a note on her door, basement apartments, that she was leaving town for a while. She hadn't paid rent for over 2 months, left the burned shell of a car in front of his house, and in the 6 months she lived there, never once took her trash out. Finally, the loan company they were calling because you guessed it, she was behind on her payments. I had no idea where she would go. I didn't really know any of her friends. I called Dad in Kentucky. Guess who answered the phone? I was livid. I wanted my car back now, or I would be calling the police. She starts crying and carrying on until Dad takes the phone. He begged me to give her a week to straighten everything out before I did anything. After a week, Dad calls and asks for another week, telling me Kelly is looking for a job and trying to turn her life around. Side note about our dad, he was battling cancer. Also, a few years earlier, we lost our mother to cancer, and our older brother died in a car accident a few months earlier. So, Dad was quite a pushover for Kelly. In the meantime, I'm getting calls from the loan company almost daily. Her job stopped calling. Guess insurance paid them for their loss. Her landlord stopped calling too, assuming he had a hazmat team come and clean his basement, and he no longer rents rooms. But the investigator, I don't know what his title was, called so much we were on a first-name basis. Let's call him Tom. It's been over 3 months with no contact from Kelly. Get updates from Dad, though. The next time Tom the investigator called, I would be ready. Tom called a few days later, averaged 3 calls per week, and had so much information for him. I told him where Kelly was working, the address and phone number of the restaurant, early 2000, no Google, what car she is driving. Mine still had my tags on it. The only thing I asked was to not bother my dad, who was going through very aggressive chemo. Tom was shocked and said he never had a family member offer this much info, ever. I laughed and told him he hasn't lived with my sister and her dumpster fire lifestyle. The aftermath. Kelly lost her job. New restaurant wouldn't tolerate her shenanigans and didn't appreciate the police coming in to talk to them. She blew through, literally. All the money she stole and had to hide from new people. As for my car, well, we made a trip to see my dad and get the car back, but once we saw it, we were mad. The windshield and rear door window were broken. One of the side mirrors was hanging by the electrical cord. So much garbage in the entire car. Apparently, she lived in the car for a week. We signed the car over to her before we left. Dad told me it would be the last time he asked me to help Kelly out. Kelly just smirked like she had won the lottery. Before we left, we made sure to call our insurance carrier and remove the car from our coverage. We drove home, mad but feeling like a 130-pound weight had been cut from our necks. My father has been a mistreating deadbeat for my whole life until he found a good-paying job at some point when I was in uni. He decided to help me out with everything. He told my mom he'll give her $1,000. That is a huge amount in our currency, to put into my uni and other things I would need, but not tell me about it because he was unsure if someone that only recently became a legal adult could spend this amount in a smart way. Then died 3 days before meeting with my mom. I was heartbroken because no matter how bad, he was still a dad. The funeral passed, and I told my mom, you don't find it weird that they haven't said a single thing about the money? And she told me to give them time because this happened out of the blue, and they were probably too shocked to be able to get through everything. A month passes, and my grandparents call my mom, and they say they need to talk about this money arrangement they had with my father. My mom gets excited because we just started experiencing some monetary issues, and that amount of money would be a huge relief. Then they offer us a deal because my father lived with his parents. Half of their apartment belonged to me. If I agreed to discard that heritage through a notary, then I would receive the money. Honestly, the alarm bells were ringing all over because it was money my father specifically put away for me. There wasn't any deal between him and my mother. He just wanted to do something for me once in a blue moon. But me and my mom, we are really trusting people. If someone says we will do this, we believe those people because we don't lie. So why would they? Also, I didn't really want this part of the apartment because it would never be fully mine, as my grandparents don't really like me and also have another son and granddaughter. So we agreed to the deal. Then I sign the documents and wait 6 months while my grandparents lead us on, until finally they get fed up with my mother asking about their part of the deal and tell her straight up that they will not be giving us money. And as a topping on the cake, they don't even believe I will actually be able to finish the university because we all know she's not the brightest in our family. Okay. COVID starts, and everyone is working from home. I get a girlfriend and a therapist who are both shocked with how calmly me and my mother have accepted defeat. They tell me that I need to put them in their place. but I don't think they meant for me to do what I did. After I built myself a computer with some help of my father, he asked me to help build his own. It was a rare but a welcome bonding experience. After his death, the computer was just standing there, losing its value, and my grandparents were dead set on selling it for the same amount my father bought it for. No amount of it's been 4 years since he built it would work on them. So I got a little plan brewing in my brains. Since my grandparents knew I was working from home, I called them and asked to borrow my dad's P because mine is broken. Only for 2 weeks until I receive a paycheck and have enough money to repair mine. We have a lot of back and forth. They really didn't want to give it to me, but I had an argument to everything they said, so they agreed in the end. Just because I put too much trust in people who don't deserve it, I ask her once again, if there's any way she could give me the money my father has left me. My grandmother says that we already been through this conversation. And besides, I don't need this money now because I have a paying job. Okay, it was your last chance. I come over to get the LAC and my mom waits for me in her car. She meets my uncle, my father's brother, and they have a little chat. And he says, we had a computer at our house and had to put it in the basement because the damn thing was taking too much space. Our kid does her homework on a tablet now. Before I leave, my granddad tries to have a word with my grandma to give me the PC and not ask for it back because they do not need it. She shuts him down. I come down with the CE, we leave. I immediately block my granny's number. My mom is not so cold-hearted, so she decides to keep in contact. 2 weeks pass, and Grandma calls my mother to ask about the computer. My mom comes up with a lie, that basically there is no repairing to my computer, and if I give their computer back, I won't be able to work, to which my grandma responds with, "Oh, that's bad. I'm sure you will figure something out. But we need the computer for our granddaughter to do school projects on it." So my mom responds, "What about that computer that they have in the basement and don't use it as it takes too much space? I'm sure you will figure something out." She blocks my grandmother after this and tells me that if there's something I want to tell her, I can. My hands are completely untied and my mom is done trying to find a compromise with those people. Before that, my mom's trying to make me rethink my decision of not giving the computer back. I call my grandmother and she responds with the voice of an absolutely tortured soul. "Oh, how could you do it? Wow. Wow." I told her that I learned to act like this from her. We have a huge argument and her points all based on crapping on my mother. How it was all her idea that my mother made me hate them, that she never loved my dad. Crap was heartbreaking to hear considering my whole life. My mom was the one who asked me not to cut the family out of my life because they are a family, even if a crappy one. So I tell her that my mom has been nothing but ever accepting to their crappy antics. And if not for her, the situation would look way worse. They failed to connect to me when my father was alive. They never reached out after his death. They were disregarding the fact that not only their son died, but it was also my father. It was my mom's ex-husband. We were all grieving. She can hear that I'm not sorry for her in any way. She treated my father horribly, so I was blaming her in some way too, but never put that in words. So she tries one last thing she could come up with. What about the other granddaughter? She need the computer for her school. If you hate me so much, at least think of her. She loves you, and I say the one who has both of her parents alive and well. The one who had a computer, but it was so useless to her they put it in the basement. I think she and her living dad can figure it out just fine. There was a pause. And she goes, "Did your mother tell you to say this to me?" Once again, shifting the blame onto my mom. I heard it enough times in my life, so I just said, "Okay, I will say something my mother has never told me to say to you. Go screw yourself and tell my granddad I don't hold any grudges at him. You are the only one at fault." I drop the call and block her number. The end. So this is a funny story where I know I wasn't exactly in the right, but it was still malicious compliance. So I'm a software engineer, and I'm a gal. So as you can imagine, I'm always either the only or one of very, very few non-males in the team. This mic is from a previous job of mine.
I was the primary SWE software engineer on a project.
One random Wednesday. Yes, I remember the day of the week. We had a meeting scheduled with the client. This was a large company and the client was in a different country. So the meeting was scheduled virtually. Now, if you know anything about me, I'm a bit of a promiscuous gal, and I guess this day I was being a bit silly and wore a dress that was a teeny tiny but too short. At lunch, I was told by my manager that someone had complained and I needed to go home and change. I knew I was wrong and immediately apologized, but I brought up the meeting I had coming up. Now, as per company policy, we could not take any company equipment home unless we were the scheduled on-call, or unless we had permission. I could not take this call from home without the company laptop I needed to demo something, and I knew none of the other engineers on my team could manage the demo. Yes, they knew how it worked, but no one knew it as well as me, and they had to refer to manuals to do the demo and answer questions, which is not a great presentation for the client. So I offered two options. I get to take the company laptop home for the night. I sit in one of the conference rooms for the next hour and a half and then join the meeting from that room. I was told neither was an option. I either had to go home and then return after changing, or go home and join in the call via a telephone and let a teammate present. I presented my arguments and my manager then told me that I should change and come back. There's no ways I was doing that, mainly because it would take too long. I made that clear. So he offered that I could take the next off out of my unlimited medical leave if I came back because he knew how important the client was. I once again suggested I take the company laptop home. I had done it multiple times when I was on call, so it wasn't a trust issue. He said no, that's only when you cannot take a call from the office. I gave one more shot to explaining that even if I went home and left right away, I would miss most of the call, but he did not care. He said he would take care of the call until I reached. I said okay and put in the next day off along with an email confirming what we had discussed and then headed home. I obviously was not in a rush. I got home, changed, and went back to the office. As soon as I left home, I started receiving frantic calls asking where I was. I explained that it would take me 45 minutes to reach the office if traffic allowed and they should start the call. Bottom line, no one was prepared. Everyone freaked out and made a mess of the presentation. The client was unimpressed and did not move forward with any further project. So yes, I messed up, but I was willing to make up for it. He did not listen to me and chose to dismiss my statements, so I did exactly what he wanted. Could I have stopped at a mall 5 minutes away and picked up leggings? Yes. Did I choose to follow his instructions by letter? Yes. Edit. I cannot reply to so many comments, so thank you everyone for your comments. I want to clarify that the problem was not with my outfit being too short for the meeting. If the meeting had happened before the complaint reached my manager, I'd have gone home and taken the L on the half day. But the problem came because I had to attend the meeting and they had to enforce their punishment on me. I forgot to put the outcome. The manager did try to blame me, but I simply reminded him that I had told him about the issue and emailed him the discussion of our meeting. I had explicitly told him this would happen if he sent me home to change, but he said he would handle it. He wasn't that bad of a person to say that didn't happen, so he simply used that to make our lives harder about everyone being fully involved in all projects, which meant a lot more meetings and a lot less work getting done. So I quit not much longer, and I know multiple others did because it was affecting bonuses too. I, 20 female, have recently been thrown into emotional whiplash regarding my relationship with my 53 female mom. Growing up, my mom, and both of my parents for that matter, have always been quite conservative and traditionally Christian people. Still, during the 2020 lockdown, everything seemed to get more intense. From Joe Rogan podcasts to watching Alex Jones, my mom took it all in and became angry, extremely angry at any possible woke issue she could get her hands on. Being a few hours away in my second year of college, I'm somewhat removed from her charged political rants. However, being home for spring break has given me a broad scope as to the extent to which the nature of our relationship has changed. From the first few moments I got in touch with my parents this week, it's been constant outrage at Baby, Killers, Snell, and once being a part of the Illuminati. Today, she managed to see my LinkedIn profile and yelled at me for including my chef-her cisgender pronouns, saying how I never get hired, how I reflect badly on my parents, and how she won't tell her friends to look me up on LinkedIn. Besides the fact that I identify as a liberal agnostic and vehemently disagree with her on pretty much every political issue, having these conversations and being yelled at simply for not agreeing with her every political whim is so exhausting. In the rare moments where I don't get lectured about politics, which I am never the one to bring up, we have some sweet moments and a semblance of a healthy mother-daughter relationship. It makes me incredibly sad that my relationship with my mom has become so strained. I spend hours upon hours at night stressing and worrying about my future, knowing that the way I live my life will never be something she agrees with. I'm scared of losing my relationship with my mom. I love her, but every time I talk to her, I'm in a constant battle, justifying my existence and thought process in every conversation. I'm scared to ask her for anything, such as permission to go on a trip to see my long-distance boyfriend that I would be paying for, or payment for a bus ticket back to my college town, knowing that with every ounce of financial and parental power over me, she holds, the less I get to live a life that I want to live. I don't know what to do or how to fix this situation. And most importantly, I don't know how to be excited about my future without the impending weight of being screamed at or disowned for any little thing I do. I've stopped looking forward to visiting my mom and actively want to spend as little time as possible with her. It crushes me because I love her so much. But every time I leave for school, I can't help but feel relieved at being able to relax. Do I have any hope for a normal relationship with my mom? Or am I doomed to a gradually declining mother-daughter relationship for the rest of my life?